a lot of conversations that you and I have had, especially you, pertaining to this whole hemp side of business, and more specifically in the state of California. So let's move into our next segment, switch to California, and let's welcome in capital markets advisor to Glasshouse Brands, along with investor and advisor to the sector, Seth Yakatan. What is going on, my friend?
How you doing?
I'm good.
Happy to be here.
I like that little headpiece there, man. It's
well, you got to rep the brand a little bit, you know. It's okay.
So I think people that
honored to be here. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. I know when we were at Benzenga, Anthony, when we met with Kyle along with you, Seth, we got a chance to go for dinner with you the one night, but extremely well connected within the industry. What I love about you as well and your story is just really understanding the history and culture side related to California and cannabis. I know there's a lot of stories that you could probably tell, and we'd love to hear all of them. But listen, I think the big reason why we wanted to have you on here today is just there's this news. Obviously, we had Kyle on, I think it was last month, and he was talking about something that they would consider about flipping potentially to hemp with some of the facility that's at the facility in, where's it located again in Camarillo. And, you know, since then, obviously, the state's come out and basically banned all hemp products containing THC, which was announced by Governor Gavin Newsom. I think that went into effect earlier this week. But first thing I wanted to ask, was this the right decision made by the government in the state of California?
Gosh, I've never been on your show, Shad, and I know you guys focus a lot more on the political side of things. That's not my game. I am of the opinion that government is best, which governs least.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't understand a lot of things that government does. I don't understand why he enacted the ban. I don't understand a week later why he then enabled cannabis lounge consumption to be legal. So look, I think if you're trying to protect the regulated cannabis industry, figuring out a way to, you know, shut down illicit and shut down hemp, which is, you know, kind of taking share away, has a motivation. I'm not gonna. I think most politicians are idiots. So this just seems to be another reflex of stupidity, as opposed to well thought out.
Yeah,
I guess.
So, question, Seth, taking it from a product's perspective, why, or in your opinion, why is there a need for hemp products in a state like California with a state-run legal cannabis industry?
Gosh, Anthony, why is there a need for 17 cheeseburger places?
Okay.
I don't know. I think what you found is that, you know, in specific product sets, hemp is easier to get. If I'm a producer of product, you know, the legal and regulatory framework that's been established for the sale and distribution of regulated cannabis is fairly onerous.
Yeah.
I can grow a hemp plant. I can put it into a product. I can get it into retail like any other product, and I can ubiquitously distribute it. So I don't know that there's necessarily a need. I think given the inefficiency of market access, there has been a consumer demand. I also think in states where you don't have regulated product, this has shown up as a alternative to cannabis. I also think you can potentially, in some instances, make it cheaper because there's less tax.
See that completely. And I mean, it is actually a very good alternative. Well, not alternative, but it's more accessible on a consumer basis, especially even in my state in Florida. Medical, it's got barriers to entry. Hopefully we get adult use passed come November. But I mean, as far as hemp products go, they are much more accessible. I can buy them with a credit card, and they can show right up to my door at my house, and it's a much easier, less friction process.
So I think accessibility has created the demand.
Yeah.
Is there a need for it? I don't know that there's a need for it. I don't know that we have a need for another sports beverage company either. But you know, someone's going to try and start it, right? So.
We actually know one that's that's coming out in the next couple of months.
I bet.
So how are things going in California overall? I mean, I thought it was a little bit of a mixed message with the with the cannabis cafes getting green lit, but the farmers market, which to me sounded like a great idea, which I know had the caveat of state run, got shut down. Were those mostly to get like the farmers and some of the OG growers and market participants, just give them another outlet to really have their product in the hands of the consumer, even though it would be obviously in a regulated, ran ecosystem?
I think that was the motivation. I think in the United States, I'm a history major, and you have this constant struggle between state and federal rights historically. Most of our hugest issues of the country have come down to that. We had a small war in the 1800s over the difference between states and federal rights and the humanity of slavery, right? So in cannabis, it's even more complicated because let's just look at what Newsom did recently. He said, okay, I'm going to allow you to now serve food and cannabis in the same place. But each local municipality can do that on their own. So I'm going to tell you what, there ain't going to be no dispensaries in Beverly Hills, and you ain't going to go smoke weed and eat food in Beverly Hills. But you sure can do it in Santa Monica, right? So when you kind of look at enforcement of it, and how it manifests, I don't know. And why things happen, I don't know. If I go back to your farmer's market, yeah, I think the farmer's market was a way to empower, the small guy who's been marginalized. A lot of the craft people in the industry have not been able to compete with the glass houses just because of the access to capital and the economies of scale and the size. And sometimes when you see something like that, where you have an agenda and you have a political program that could probably do good, and for whatever reason it doesn't occur, it just frustrates me more about politics. And I think it makes it harder. Let me loop back to another question that you had. California is a knife fight, bro. And it's going to be for the foreseeable future. You probably saw on Friday that State House, their major lender filed for receivership. Not to toot my own horn, but that is something I've been publicly prognosticating for about 8 months. There's probably 2 or 3 other shoes that are going to drop there. Retail is a very challenging environment here at the dispensary level. It's not simple. There are 4 or 5 people that are very, very good at it. But, it started with the bankruptcy of Herbal in the summer of 2023, when you had that middle layer of supply chain go down. And it's been a slow, staggered, problem that I think you're getting close to bottom to. I'm not sure you're at the bottom yet, but you're near it and approaching it. But it's difficult. It's a difficult environment to make money. It's a difficult environment for specific companies to be profitable in the context of a $4 billion market.
Yeah. Do you feel like you have to be there in California if you're a brand and you want to have, let's say, national staying power? Like, you need to be able to compete and have your product on shelves to get that notoriety from a brand perspective?
Perhaps. I think the global culture of cannabis is still coming from California, and I still think there's a very strong California bias. I think we can come up with a couple of brands that I will just talk about in the edibles space, like Wana and Groon, who are really not in California and are successful and have good businesses. And we could talk about another edibles company called Thunderstorm, which is based here and has a good business. So I think if your origin story is California, you probably need to be here. I do think, though, that you can have an effective national cannabis brand without being in California if you're not from California. Kiva and Camino and Lost Farm, as an example, is California origin story. And Moves, Stizzy is the same thing. Cookies is the same thing. So I put up a post a couple of weeks ago in conjunction with Hoodie where I talked about the 20 top brands in the United States, and the preponderance of them were MSO owned, and all the ones that weren't MSO owned, aside from Wild, had started in California. So there's a trend there, and I think you're going to see long term the value of brand exist, and I do think California will be at the forefront of that. For me, California is going to be the biggest market for cannabis until my children have children. I don't care what any number says. I don't care what anyone looks at. New York is going to be a complete, Keystone Cop clown show, Rambo 7, type of scenario for the next 5 or 6 years. I
Yeah.
live here. My tax base is here. I'm embedded here. I'm paying the freight to be next to the ocean and maybe fall off. And I do think that you're going to see the generation long term of significant value out of California and significant M&A events out of California.
What do you think about Florida going adult use and Florida starting to scale? I mean, we could hit that $4, $5, $6 billion mark pretty quickly when you calculate in the tourism numbers and the scale of the industry that it has right now.
I'm going to say something publicly that I've said a few times. I think Florida is Kim Rivers' state to own and dominate, and she's dominating it, and she will continue to dominate it. And I think what you're doing in Florida with adult use coming is you're playing for second, third, and fourth, right?
100%.
You're swimming against the U.S. or Australia in a sprint, and you're hoping to get a silver or a bronze. I think Florida is one of those explosive states that I get, as you can see, I get really excited about.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, Maryland, Ohio is the same thing. Again, let's go back to politicians. You seem to have a politician who, mentally relative to the psychology of the U.S. is back in 1962. So
Right.
Maybe you get some relief there if you get the voters to really show this is what you want to do. But I think Florida is a state that could honestly double, or triple.
Yeah.
And I think, for me, I got into cannabis because of the wellness aspect of it. And one of the first businesses that I tried to do was I thought I could do an ice cream truck model with essentially a caregiving nurse to every high rise in Boca, right? And I was just going to go and put product in.
How'd
and when
that
you
go?
it didn't work. It did. Add it to the scrap heap of incinerated tax loss.
You could do it right now with hemp. Beautiful.
You could. I was involved for a long time with a company called Ease. I'll pause on that.
Yeah.
But to your point, I think the opportunity for Florida to emerge as maybe one of the biggest states, and also a state that functions properly from because of the vertical integration, you're going to make, if you can figure out how to get into Florida and get product sold, you're probably going to be able to make money. Whereas in California, because you have layers and layers and layers, it's hard. I think Florida is one of those states that will be, what we're talking about as the industry grows and expands.
Yeah.
And you're going to be able to see how, the transition from a 10-year medical state goes into rec very, very explosively. But make no bones about it, I think Kim is one of the savviest operators in the industry. And I think she has made her bed and is going to bet, generations of return on the expansion of that space. She is. I know she was on your show a couple weeks ago or a week or two ago. I saw it. Huge fan of hers. And I think, Boris is playing for second there is really, really what I think.
Yeah. I mean, she's also brought in brands. She's got Alien Labs and Connected from
she
California.
has.
She's got Sunshine Cannabis. That's a homegrown brand in the state. Then you've got Brady Cobb with Sunburn, which is a true Florida brand.
Huge fan of Brady, huge fan of Sunburn, huge fan of that story. It doesn't get more authentic than that.
And 710s down here, Backpack Boys, Jungle Boys. They're all West Coast transplants that are getting love.
I think Ivan and Jungle Boys has 10 stores there now. So
they do. They hail in comparison in terms of scale, but on an ounce per store basis, they're selling flower. And the Backpack Boys 710 are doing good too.
I also need to give a shout out to my guys at the Flowery, who I know are ripping it down there as well. I
know Lod and Jack are doing quite well.
They're doing a great job down there, and some of their owners are people that I have a lot of respect for. So
Seth,
great setup.
Speaking of great job, you've got close to 36,000 followers on your LinkedIn profile, and a lot of your posts are averaging between 500 and 1,000 likes and over 200-300 comments. So job well done, to say the least. And I think if anybody wants to know how to manage their LinkedIn profile properly, they might want to follow up with you afterwards. But when I talk about doing things efficiently, one of the posts that actually stuck out with me recently, you outlined that these are the two biggest investment trends you need to watch in cannabis now. One, equity valuations that are an all-time low, and two, debt refinancing is happening. This means buy equity in the strongest companies. They're only getting stronger. Seems pretty simple based on what you just outlined, but do you want to elaborate a little bit more on what you're getting to there?
Sure thing. And thank you for the laudation on LinkedIn. It's been a lot of work. I will tell you that $8 and being a LinkedIn influencer will get you online at Starbucks in October for his pumpkin spice latte. So maybe you can tell me how we make money off of that. But right now, it's a lot of fun. But it's not, it's work. If I look at top 10 MSO life science comps, and I look at any, trading multiple, and let's say, last 12 months or next 12 months, your US MSO average is 1.8x revenue. Glass House is trading at about 8.8x revenue.
Yeah.
And if you look at where they're at on historic 52-week high lows, they're near it. And their year to dates are down significantly. So like Cannabis as an example, love the team there, love Jassy. That's a stock that's down 50% on the year. Nothing's changed except they sold off assets. If you look at Curaleaf, it's down 27% on the year. Terrason's down 27% on the year. Trulieve has been crushing it, but Verano's down 30. So if you look at the cohort, I really don't think scheduling is priced in. I think these stocks all on a macro basis trade like micro caps. I think if 3 happens on December 3rd, which is my birthday, thank you, I think you're going to get a 30 to 40% price bump in it. The folks that have been listening
on November 5th, Amendment 3 you're referring to?
On December 3rd is when the DEA is going to come out with their announcement on their opinion on 3.
Correct. So from my understanding, the hearing, as we've talked about, Anthony, that's going to be a couple of weeks. That'll take you into the new year. But is there any information in December that could lead to stocks actually getting a bump?
I think the outcome of that hearing could be interesting. I think you're going to get a signal. I also think if I just go back to the macro viewer that you have that's been in the sector for 7 years, if you haven't been able to take profit out, I do not think scheduling is priced in. I think you're going to get a 30 to 40% price bump in most names across the board on that day.
Ooh,
and I think if you're in,
statement. Wow,
I do timestamp it because I think I'm going to be right. I think you're going to make a lot of money, and if you're long the sector, dollar average down now because I think you're going to get a bump. And for anyone who's new to the sector, and I think if you buy, GTI, Curaleaf, Verano, and Glass House, and you take $10,000 and you put that piece of your 401k in a portfolio and you forget about it for 10 years, that's going to be an 8 to 10 bagger. Like there's just no doubt. When you look at the multiples that alcohol and tobacco companies trade at relative to cannabis companies, you're a log order away from where those stocks trade at. And one of the things I love to do, and I'm going to do a post on this, is there's a shopping center near my house that has a sports nutrition store. It has a sun tanning place. It has a dry cleaner. It has a lip injection guy. It has a coffee guy. And it has a Subway in it. All those things are selling drugs. They're just different form of drugs, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So with cannabis, what we've done is we say, no, you got to go to the worst part of California to where you might, experience unsavory people to put your dispensary. That dispensary should be right there, which is probably why hemp has gotten acceptance. But I think once you see the normalization of that and the unlock that I think we all think is coming, I think you're going to see these things go right up.
So when you look at some of these major MSOs, you think they're the at least 8 to 10 baggers as far as like where we're at with the prices right now. That's what you're thinking long term, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, look, I hound him a lot online, but look at GTI. Right, GTI is a company that trades at 6 times EBITDA.
Here come the comments in about people who are owning specific stocks. We try to don't get so fixated on one specific stock. But
Seth's context was on a 5-year basis. I mean, 5-year basis, I would expect those returns from these companies as well, or something went very wrong in the thesis.
Yeah. So I mean, you have a peer group on average. If we look at the top 10, right, that's trading on an average of about 1.7 to 1.8 times EBITDA. right?
Yeah.
Or economic value to sales. Sorry, EV to sales, 1.2 to 1.8 times. Your tobacco and liquor companies trade at 6 to 10 times all day
Yep.
long,
Yep.
right? Okay, so if I'm wrong by 700, by 1,000 basis points, I'm still right, right?
Yeah.
If you get a 2x increase, and GTI goes from a $2.5 or $3 billion market cap to a $5 billion market cap over a 5 to 6 year period, I'm right. And that doesn't price in any inevitable consolidation and any inevitable of entrance of all of the verticals that I always talk about coming in, from pharma and tobacco and CPG and wellness and beverage and alcohol. Because in cannabis, what you have is you have a product that's competing for wallet share for all of those verticals, right? And has a lower level of penetration. So eventually some smart guy at Dr. Pepper Keurig is going to go, oh gosh, well, I can just take that customer and sell them the same thing. It's inevitable. It's inevitable.
Where are we 5 years from now in this space? How many companies are still left, you think?
Boy, oh boy. I think you're going to see further attrition at the large level for two reasons. Most of these companies have been, with no disrespect to Canada, reverse mergers in Canada. And from a wrapping perspective, that doesn't create long-term shareholder value from an equity, and we can empirically discuss that. The other thing is these companies have also then been saddled with a lot of debt. So I don't want to be a prognosticator of doom, but, if I look at someone like a Forefront, or I look at someone, right, or if I look at like what AYR and Ascend did, where they basically just traded a bunch of debt and exchanged it for equity to kick that debt down the road, you do have some pretty decent sized looming debt maturities that I think will force some of these folks' hand. We talked about State House, which is probably the largest thing to happen in California in a while. I have a huge amount of respect for Lori, who's the CEO of Gold Flora. I'm looking at that and saying, the math doesn't math. So something's going to happen.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was about to say, after that last financing round that they have, the math doesn't math, especially when you look at the cap stack on that name completely.
So I think you're going to see the combination of, micro cap equity behavior and too much debt on some of these assets act as the forcing function for some level of continued, kind of failure. But I still think that, the market's awesome.
Well, like you said, eventually one day you got to start turning a profit, because the debt man's going to come to collect his money. And I understand that. And I'm curious to see, we always talk about certain legislation and how it would be very ideal and helpful for this industry right now, but you can't obviously bank on that. But we are starting to see, based on the latest earnings, especially the last 2 quarters, a gap that's starting to widen a bit here, pertaining to the GTIs and Trulies of the world. And let's face it, that trend's only going to continue more and more and more with how they're performing. And I'm just curious to see like how things will start to, what they'll look like 5 years from now. And, most importantly, just how the overall industry starts to mature. But what were you going to say?
Something that I talk about with broadly, and it may or may not be super applicable to your guests, is that I do think there's a lot of amazing private companies out there where I've spent a lot of my time. And when we look at operators in the lower middle market, there's probably 10 to 20, 3 to 5 state MSOs that if you're not involved in the industry, no one knows about. I think they're going to be on fire. I repeatedly talk about a lot of multi-state brands that are also, really on fire. And I think where you're going to see a lot of action outside of the Pubco side is when the walls eventually come down. Those lower middle market companies are either going to be platforms off of which things are going to, leverage, or they're going to be the ones that get, the targets that get sought after, because some of them are very profitable. And I talk about a lot of them. And I also think that if I'm, a TerraSend or a Verano or an AYR, I'm looking at those because their cash flow, and I have money, public currency and cash. So I do think you're going to see kind of this private consolidation wave, which occurs, there's a lot of talk about beverage as well. And I do think that that's one of the first places you're going to see strategic crossover is in beverage.
Look at Ohio, like August 6th, the end, the first month, 44 million. And what a start that state has had with no lead up time. But you can understand why, I think you're right. There's some very viable private companies that are going to become important assets for some of these pubco companies as they start to expand into more and more states. But that is a huge trend that's probably going to happen the next few months, if not years.
Yeah, I think, again, just to toot my own horn, in conjunction with Hoodie, I put out this kind of top 20 league tables of MSOs. I've been dropping that once a month, and I would say that 40% of that are private companies. And Stizzy is probably the largest private MSO in the United States. And without disclosing, any material non-public information, they're probably very close behind a company called Good Day Farm, which the management of Good Day Farm does not want me to talk about, but it is one of the best run companies in the industry, and they pretty much own, the Southeast when it comes to cannabis. So you have two MSO, kind of AYR, Ascend size companies that just don't even show up on the radar screen unless you're, into the industry. And I think you're going to see a lot of those.
You've got companies like C3 as well, Holistic Industries in the Northeast. I feel like those are going to be the assets that get targeted by private equity. It's not going to be, if and when that actually shoe drops, it's not going to be the pubcos that we know now. And I could also see like a mega merger coming with a couple of the tier ones.
So shameless plug. I'm gonna, I have a lot of friends in Missouri. I have a lot of friends in New Jersey. You have 7 or 8 operators there, Illicit Gardens and Greenlight, who are among them. That's an ecosystem that really works. And you have 6, 8, 10, people that own 10, 15, 20 stores and are vertically integrated. You could see a combination there. I think you could see assets plucked out of Missouri. You have another group, including See-Through, that we haven't talked about, called Nova Farms. And Derek Ross is powerhouse, right? Like the passion, the connection that he has, the understanding of brands. He's actively, shining a light on MSOs and saying, I'm coming for your customer and I'm taking them out of your parking lot. Like it's coming. So
I've wondered, maybe you have insight into this, but I've wondered for some time why MSOs. Maybe it's because none of the companies that are in that market want their stock for currency, but why MSOs aren't going into Missouri and plucking assets as accretive acquisitions and just to buy that cash flow, because Missouri is a relatively stable, profitable market that a lot of MSOs don't have exposure to.
I think because it's hard. And I think because the people that have been there for a long time, and they do not want to trade cash flow for MSO paper.
I don't blame them at this point.
I have publicly, kind of baited Ben Kovler. I do not. It's a good thing I advise Glasshouse, and it's a good thing I do not advise Curaleaf, Verano, or GTI, because I would be running a deal team of 6 snipers, and I would be throwing term sheets at everything with cash flow in the United States now, as opposed to buying my stock back. So Ben, if you want to come on the Dales Report and defend your strategy and debate me publicly, I'm giving you an open invitation as my friend to treat you with respect and love here.
And on behalf of Anthony and I, we agree to that.
Ben is one of the. Ben is actually the only CEO of a tier 1 that has not appeared on the show. Thus far.
Well, we've reached out to some of his former team members that actually know him quite well. He's just not that type of guy. Doesn't like interviews. But listen, this has been great. We've had a lot of great feedback and comments here today. Had some people say this is like new guests and new lifeblood. We need to have you on regularly, my friend. I know you're a busy guy, but I think it would be very, very helpful to have you on.
Well, don't tease me, because I would love to be on. I couldn't tell you how appreciative I am of the platform and of the time. Huge respect for what Shad, you and Anthony have built. You have an amazing platform here, and I am honored that you would take the time to have me on. And I am shocked that anyone who listens to me would spend 10 minutes out of their day listening to me, but happy to come on anytime and just really grateful for the opportunity. So thank you very much.
Well, appreciate it. Are we going to see you next week in Chicago?
You bet your sweet Aunt Susie you will, bud.
Awesome.
That's you know, come on. That's like my zone.
You're keynoting the hoodie event, aren't you, on Monday?
I am. That is an invite-only private event, but yes, I am speaking at the hoodie event. They've been very Hoodie has identified the fact that I actually have an audience, and has been very kind to partner with me on data for my LinkedIn feed. And yes, I am speaking at their event and keynoting it with Aaron Gray, who was the lead analyst at ACG. Correct? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, I got to run. I'm a Tigers fan, and they just scored 3 runs in the top of the 8th, so I got to see the last of this game. I know there's not a lot of baseball fans here, but hey, it's fall baseball. It's always a good time of year. But look forward to seeing
White Sox fan. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Look forward to seeing you next week in Chicago.
Seth.
Oh, is that what you have?
Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Dad. What is going on, everyone? What'd you all think of the interview? Did you like it? Leave some comments below. This industry, it's heating up. So if there's any information that you want us to cover off, we will do it. As this industry builds up more and more momentum, we want to be here for you. And we want to take this viral. So make sure to smash that like button, click on that bell for notifications, and please, as usual, we wouldn't be here without you if you didn't subscribe. We appreciate it. Thanks for watching.